staged UFO attack on Earth. We have been preconditioned by all the media for the past couple of decades to slowly but surely start accepting the existence of aliens and UFOs. I can tell you right now that 99% of every UFO sighting that has ever taken place has actually not been an unidentified flying object, because this has always been military technologies. Another thing I'd like to point out is surveys and questionnaires. You know, we get surveys and questionnaires all the time, sent out by the state or by the government or by our rulers and our officials and so on and so forth. Do you really think that these ruling powers care about what you think? Do you really think that they're waiting to ask you and receive your answer before making a decision? Since the 60s, the amount of people who believe in extraterrestrials have skyrocketed, and are only increasing day by day in our modern world. This only confirms the success and the plans that are taking place to first manipulate you to believe in UFOs, and second, to conduct a UFO attack that is going to force the whole world to unite to fight off this enemy and accept the New World Order.
A former Canadian government official is warning we may be on the verge of intergalactic war, saying, quote, the Bush administration has finally agreed to let the military build a forward base on the moon, which will put them in a better position to keep track of the comings and goings of visitors from space, and to shoot at them if they so decide.
I was introduced to the late Dr. Wernher von Braun, in the U.S., the father of rocketry. In my first meeting with him, during that first 3.5 hours, he said to me, Carol, you will stop the weaponization of space, because there is a lie being told to everyone that the weaponization of space is now first being based upon the evil empire, the Russians. There are many enemies, he said, against whom we're going to build this space-based weapon system, the first of whom was the Russians, which was existing at that time. Then there would be terrorists. Then there would be third world countries. Now we call them rogue nations or nations of concern. Then there would be asteroids. And then he would repeat to me over and over, and the last card, the last card, the last card would be the extraterrestrial threat. As a military strategist, as a person who worked on the MX missile, which I did later, he said, you will find that there is going to be a spin to find some enemy against whom we have to build space-based weapons, and now we should expect the spin. And that's the formula, except that it's all based on a lie.
A supersonic saucer. Called the Silver Bug, it was truly revolutionary. The plans show in detail a multi-jet engine craft that boasted amazing maneuverability and speed. It's an intriguing thought that this concept may tie in with the work of the German scientists who brought saucer technology to the US at the close of the Second World War.
What was needed were certain cover stories. What do you do when people are spotting aircraft and then telling reporters that they've seen something very unusual flying out of an airbase in Nevada? And frankly, this was the origin of a lot of the sightings that took place in the mid-50s, 1954, 55, 56, of unidentified flying objects, the UFOs. So the CIA was involved in encouraging people to believe that, yes, they saw UFOs, and the CIA and the military tried to be very helpful to reporters to get these stories out, to divert the attention of the country, and particularly the people in this region, about what they had actually seen.
Mexican Air Force pilots capturing on videotape what are said to be 11, count them, 11 UFOs.
The Mexican Air Force has released a video that some of you are going to find difficult to believe. A journalist says it shows images of UFOs tracking a Mexican military plane.
So what's the truth about UFOs? The story of successive attempts to develop radically new forms of flight, conducted under the strictest secrecy, is inextricably bound up with our relationship with UFOs over the last 60 years. Whether it's Allied pilots buzzed by strange balls of fire in 1942, or the Roswell incident 5 years later, there is a strong case to be made that secret military technology offers a convincing explanation for many UFO stories.
Anytime the government has secrets that they can keep from us, they can manipulate us by those secrets. In essence, they still remain 25 years at least ahead of us in technology, information, and knowledge, and secrets, and they are using them against us. I heard over the years many times over that the plan to usher in the New World Order would be to make all the people in this country and around the world feel totally helpless to prevent the New World Order from occurring, this world dominance plan, by saying that we had been invaded by aliens, so that we would say, oh, please, UN, come in and help us all. So bear in mind that there is a planned orchestration to get people to be submissive through a secret technology and information that they're keeping from you under the blanket of the so-called National Security Act.
Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
A recent Gallup poll estimates that 1 out of every 2 Americans believe in the existence of UFOs. Over 15 million people have reported seeing UFOs, of which over 2,000 were encounters with landed UFOs and their occupants. UFOs have been fired upon by jet fighters and anti-aircraft missiles, but with no effect. They give off powerful electromagnetic charges, often causing the breakdown of engines and electrical circuitry. They evoke strange and fearful reactions in animals and frequently cause profound psychological disturbances in humans. They have the ability to materialize as if from nowhere, but more often vanish into thin air in the midst of a sighting. Both human eyes and radar instruments have observed unbelievable aerial maneuvers, such as 90-degree turns of several thousand miles per hour, and have been clocked at speeds up to 16,000 miles per hour. There can be no longer any doubt, even to the most ardent skeptic, that UFOs exist. The question is, where do they come from? If they come from another galaxy, then they would come from at least 2 million light years away. Even traveling at light speed, 186,000 miles per second, it would take 2 million years to get there. But suppose that UFOs come from some distant star in our own galaxy. If these space visitors were to travel 1 million miles a day, it would take 70,000 years to reach the Earth from the nearest star, Alpha Centauri, which is 25.5 trillion miles from Earth. Other stars are thousands of times further out in space. Conservative estimates indicate that a spaceship carrying 10 people and traveling 5 light years to and from a nearby star system at 70% of the speed of light would consume 500,000 times the amount of energy used in the United States in 1 year. But there are other complications of space travel. Space is not a vacuum, but contains cosmic gas, dust, and particles. Nobel Prize winner Professor Edward Purcell of Harvard points out that a space vehicle traveling at the speed of light would collide with this space material in the form of radiation and with the impact of several hundred atom smashers. Man is now in the transitional period before the dawn of a new age. In his book, Flying Saucer Pilgrimage, Bryant Reeves summarizes his findings in this statement. From our analysis, the teachings of the space beings appear to support many of the principles taught in Oriental philosophy by seers of the Far East. UFO researcher John Weldon then offers this question. How credible is it to think that literally thousands of genuine extraterrestrials would fly millions of light years simply to teach New Age philosophy, deny Christianity, and support the occult? And why would the entities actually possess and inhabit people just like demons do if they were really advanced extraterrestrials? Dr. Pierre Guérin, an eminent scientist associated with the French National Council for Scientific Research, concludes that UFO behavior is more akin to magic than to physics as we know it, and that modern UFOnauts and the demons of past days are probably identical. One of the greatest waves of UFO sightings in modern history came in 1965, with more than 500 cases reported during the summer months alone. One such case was near Ann Arbor, Michigan, where 50 people and 12 police officers in 3 counties reported having seen objects flashing across the pre-dawn skies. That evening, 87 female students at Hillsdale College near Ann Arbor watched an object flying around and flashing bright lights for a period of about 4 hours. Life magazine said, "Call them what you will, flying saucers, unidentified flying objects, or optical illusions. They are back again, and seen by more people than ever before." Last week, the manifestation seemed almost to have reached the proportions of an invasion. In Washington, House Minority Leader Gerald Ford called for a full-blown investigation. In 1917, what may have been the largest crowd ever to witness a UFO occurred in Fatima, Portugal. 50,000 people watched in amazement as a huge silver disc began spinning like a windmill and dancing about in the sky. After plunging toward the earth, it climbed back into the sky and disappeared into the sun. One night during the summer of 1948, Clyde W. Tombaugh, the astronomer who discovered the planet Pluto, was sitting in the back of his home at Las Cruces, New Mexico. He and several witnesses, including other members of his family, watched a strange glowing craft move overhead. All of the witnesses agreed that the object was definitely a solid ship and that it was probably some form of extraterrestrial device. November 5th, 1945, a squadron of 5 Avenger torpedo bombers with 14 experienced crew members flew out of Fort Lauderdale Naval Air Station in Florida. It was a short, routine flight. Each plane had a full load of fuel, and weather conditions were excellent. But something strange happened. The flight leader called in and reported not having any sense of direction. Air Control then ordered the squadron to head due west. The leader, with alarm in his voice, then said, "We don't know which way is west. Everything is wrong, strange. We can't be sure of any direction. Even the ocean doesn't look as it should." He then stated that weird, unidentified aircraft were closing in on them. His radio went dead. All 5 planes disappeared without leaving a trace. A giant Martin Mariner with a crew of 13 was dispatched to search for the 5 missing planes. It had the capability to land on the roughest of seas, but this plane also disappeared into the grim silence of the Atlantic. What followed was the greatest search operation in history. For 5 days, an armada of 300 planes and 21 ships crisscrossed the sea and sky, but no trace of the 6 aircraft or 27 crew members were to be found. To this day, it remains a mystery as to what happened.
In 1960, it became apparent to the military that if they were going to have any significant covert operations, they were going to have to be underground. The reason was people are extremely observant. They notice everything that's going on. And if there was going to be huge transportation of materials, men, equipment, all kinds of stuff, that it was going to be have to be underground. There was a major meeting with all the major contractors, the big contractors like Morrison Knudsen and those type of people. And the meeting included the highly specialized area of underground operations as far as drilling down there, how you move that kind of dirt. And they started then, basically in 1960, building all these underground facilities. Right now, they're just all over the United States. It's just incredible how many there are. There's a network of tunnels that connects Edwards Air Force Base with the Tehachapi Base, with Tonopah Test Range, Groom Lake, George Air Force Base, California City, China Lake. It's a tremendous network. I have varied and many people who have told me that they exist, that they have been down there. I have a friend that is a hydraulic engineer on one of the tunnel boring machines. It's 28 feet in diameter. He works at the Nevada test site where the tunnels go down almost 3,000 feet.
After I had, of course, got out of the service, I worked for the government, you know, as a test pilot on various different particular aircraft. While I did that particular activity, I was asked if I would mind working on some simulators, and I thought that was a good idea, good for my future, so I did. Developed this particular process of joining this material. It took quite some time, over a period of about 4 years, and then it was indicated to us that we'd go on a special project in New Mexico, which we did. And it was about 3 or 4 years after we had gotten there that we found out that these were simulators that we would be engineers on simulators for flying discs.